I've been doing this for over 30 years. 30 years of listening to people tell me things that don't add up, watching faces shift when the truth gets too close for comfort, and making calls that sometimes nobody in that room wants to hear. I've seen everything. Or so I thought. Subscribe to this channel right now, because what happened in my courtroom that Tuesday morning is the kind of case people talk about for years. Hit that like button if you believe that accountability doesn't have an age limit, because it doesn't, not in my courtroom. He walked in laughing, not a nervous laugh, not a "I'm uncomfortable and this is my defense mechanism" kind of laugh, a full, confident, chest out, "I own this room" laugh. 17 years old, designer sneakers, a smirk that told me he'd never been told no in a way that actually stuck. I've seen that smirk before. It's the smirk of someone who has charmed their way out of every consequence they've ever faced. I'm a former Manhattan family court judge. I've sat across from teenagers who sold drugs, teenagers who ran away from home, teenagers who burned bridges and blamed everyone but the person holding the match. I know the difference between a kid who is scared and acting tough and a kid who actually believes the rules don't apply to him. This was the second kind. His name was Tyler. The plaintiff, the person suing him, was Ms. Eleanor Voss, 63 years old, retired school teacher. She walked in holding a manila folder like it was a Bible, sat down with her back perfectly straight, and looked at me with the kind of eyes that said, "I just want what's right." I respect that. I respect that enormously. The case on paper was simple. Tyler had agreed to mow Ms. Voss's lawn for 8 weeks over the summer. She'd paid him $300 in advance, which, let me tell you, was already a mistake I was going to address. She claimed he showed up twice, did a poor job both times, and then stopped coming. She was suing for $220, representing 6 weeks of unearned payment. Tyler's counterclaim, he said he completed all 8 weeks. He said she was lying. He said she owed him an additional $50 for extra work. Extra work. Share this video if you know someone who takes the money, skips the work, and then asks for more, because we all know someone like that. I looked at Tyler when the clerk read the claims. He was still smiling, almost amused, like this was a school assembly he'd been dragged to. I let him smile. I've learned that you get more information from letting people be comfortable than from shutting them down immediately. That comes later. I reviewed the paperwork first. Ms. Voss had a written agreement, handwritten but signed by both parties. 8 weeks of lawn service, $37.50 per week, paid in full up front. I noticed she'd kept a copy. I noticed Tyler had signed his name in big looping letters, the kind of signature that says, "I matter." She had receipts. She had a photo of her lawn, overgrown, taken at the end of week 4, with a date stamp. Tyler had nothing in his hands. Let me say that again. He had nothing in his hands. I looked at my bailiff, Frank. Frank has been with me for 11 years. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His expression said exactly what I was already thinking. Here we go. "Mr. Tyler," I said, "where is your evidence that you completed all 8 weeks of work?" He leaned back in his chair, and I'll tell you, that almost got him a sharp word from me right there, because in my courtroom you sit up. And he shrugged. "I don't have anything written down," he said. "But I did the work. She just doesn't want to pay." "You don't have anything written down," I repeated, slowly, deliberately. He nodded like that was completely reasonable. "So your position is that you performed 6 weeks of labor with 0 documentation, 0 photos, 0 messages, 0 confirmation, and a 63-year-old retired teacher is fabricating this entire lawsuit out of malice?" He shrugged again. "She's trying to get money back." "I'm speaking. Don't shrug at me. Answer the question I asked." The smirk flickered, just for a second, but I caught it. If you believe kids need to learn that accountability is not optional, drop a comment below. Tell me what age you think consequences should start, because in my experience, the longer you wait, the harder it gets. Now here is where the case starts to turn, because as I'm questioning Tyler about his timeline, when did he first show up, what equipment did he use, how long did each session take, his answers were just slightly off. Not dramatically wrong, slightly off. And in 30 years, I've learned that slightly off is where the truth lives. He said he came every Saturday. Ms. Voss said he came twice, once on a Wednesday, once on a Saturday, and then nothing. I asked him, "Do you remember what her lawn looked like the first time you came?" "Yeah," he said. "It was long, like really overgrown." "And when you finished that first session, how did it look?" "Good, clean. I did a good job." I turned to Ms. Voss. Ma'am, what day did he first come to your home? Wednesday, June 14th, she said without hesitation. She opened her folder. She had a calendar, handwritten entries. I could see from the bench that she had marked each week with either a check mark or a note. She was prepared. I asked her to hand me the calendar through the bailiff. I looked at it. June 14th had a small check mark. June 21st had a check mark with a note. Uneven, left corner untouched. Every other week through August had a single word written in neat teacher's handwriting. The word was no-show. 6 weeks, 6 no-shows. Documented in real time by a woman who used to grade papers for 30 years and knew the value of keeping records. I looked at Tyler. You said you came every Saturday. I did. She has no record of you after June 21st. She's lying. I leaned forward. I want you to understand what that moment feels like from where I sit. I have an elevated bench. When I lean forward, the person in front of me knows I am paying very close attention. Tyler noticed. His smirk was completely gone now. Let me ask you a question, I said quietly, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. Do you have a single text message, a single voicemail, a single neighbor who can confirm you were at this woman's property on any of the 6 Saturdays in question? Pause. He opened his mouth, closed it. Because I'm going to ask you to pull out your phone right now and show me. And this is where it gets interesting. This is the moment I want you to stay for. Don't go anywhere and subscribe right now because this kind of case, this exact kind of case, is why this channel exists. He reached into his pocket slowly. He pulled out his phone and he started scrolling. I watched his face. I have watched thousands of faces in that moment. The moment when someone is either about to hand me evidence that changes everything or about to discover that the evidence they thought existed doesn't. His jaw tightened. I must have deleted some stuff, he said. You deleted text messages to your client? I clean out my phone. You clean out your phone, I said, flat, no expression. Baloney. The gallery stirred. My clerk, Sandra, looked down at her desk and pressed her lips together. Frank shifted his weight. Ms. Voss folded her hands in her lap and said nothing, because she didn't need to say anything. Her calendar had already said it. But here is the part I haven't told you yet. Here is the part that made this case something I still think about. Because right as I was preparing to rule, and I was leaning heavily toward Ms. Voss at this point hard, something came out that I did not expect, and it changed the texture of everything. Not the facts were the facts, but it changed how I thought about what justice actually looked like in this specific situation. Ms. Voss's attorney, she had brought a small claims advocate, a young woman named Priya who was sharp and well-prepared, asked to enter one more piece of evidence. I said, go ahead. She handed Frank a printout. Frank handed it to me. It was a social media post, public account, posted by Tyler himself. The date on the post was July 19th, smack in the middle of the 6 weeks he claimed to have been working. The post was a photo. Tyler on a beach, not a local beach, a beach that required a flight, smiling, tagging friends. Caption, summer, no rules, no responsibilities, no responsibilities. Posted on a Saturday. I set the paper down. I looked at him for a long moment, and I want you to understand I wasn't angry in the dramatic sense. I was calm. Because when you've been doing this as long as I have, the truth landing isn't a surprise. It's an inevitability. The only question is when. July 19th, I said, you were out of state. He looked at the paper. He looked at me. And for the first time since he walked into my courtroom laughing, Tyler was quiet. That doesn't match your testimony that you came every Saturday, I said. That doesn't match your testimony at all. He said, I might have missed 1 week. 1 week. Maybe 2. Maybe 2, I repeated. Not 6. Not 6, he said weakly. I sat back. I let the silence do its work. In my courtroom, silence is a tool. Silence is where lies go to die. Hit that like button right now if you've ever watched someone try to minimize what they did and felt your blood pressure rise. Because mine was rising, not because he lied, people lie in courtrooms every day, but because he sat there and laughed at this woman. He walked in here like this was a joke, like her money, her time, her meticulous little calendar was something to be smirked at. That calendar represented dignity, her word, her trust in a kid she'd tried to help by hiring. I've seen this before, not always with teenagers, with landlords who pocket security deposits, with contractors who take advances and vanish, with ex-partners who borrow money and then claim it was a gift. The details change. The disrespect is always the same. And now I had to decide what to do about it. Here's the internal conversation I have in these moments, and I have it fast because I don't have the luxury of days. The facts were clear. Tyler performed approximately 2 weeks of work. He was paid for 8. He owed Ms. Voss for 6 weeks at $37.50 per week, equaling $225. His counterclaim for $50 in extra work? He had no documentation, no witnesses, no photos, and a social media post that proved he wasn't even in the state during peak service weeks. The counterclaim was dismissed before I even said the words, but then I thought about something else. Tyler was 17, not an adult, but close enough that a pass wasn't warranted, close enough that the lesson needed to be real. And here is where I allow myself one private thought before I rule. What does this kid actually need from this moment? Not coddling, not cruelty, not a lecture he'll tune out by sentence 3. He needed to hear the truth from someone who wouldn't soften it. Before I tell you my ruling, share this video right now if you believe the justice system should serve people like Ms. Voss, people who do things right, people who keep records and show up prepared, people who trusted someone and got burned. They deserve a courtroom that sees them. This is that courtroom. Tyler, I said. I waited until he looked at me directly, not at his phone, not at the floor. At me. Here is what I know. You made an agreement. You took money in exchange for a promise. You broke that promise. You left a 63-year-old woman with an overgrown lawn and a lighter wallet, and then you walked into this courtroom and laughed. Let me tell you something. The laughing was the part that told me everything I needed to know about where you are right now in your life. He said nothing. People who are telling the truth don't laugh, I said. People who think they're smarter than the room laugh, and in my experience, they are always wrong. I saw it then. I saw the thing I'd been waiting for since he walked in the door. His face changed, not dramatically. This wasn't a movie, but the set of his jaw softened. His eyes dropped, not in defeat exactly, in recognition. The truth had landed. My clerk Sandra had gone very still. She does that when she knows a ruling is coming that matters. Frank was watching Tyler with the careful attention of someone who has seen 1,000 young men stand in that spot and make the choice between doubling down or coming clean. I rendered my judgment. Judgment for the plaintiff, Ms. Eleanor Voss, in the amount of $225. Counterclaim dismissed. Court costs to be borne by the defendant. Tyler nodded. Once, that was it. And Ms. Voss, this woman who had walked in holding her folder like a shield, exhaled. A long, quiet exhale. She nodded at me. She didn't cry. She didn't celebrate. She just nodded, like the world had briefly made sense again, which is all any of us really want from a courtroom. Now, I want to tell you what happened after, because the story doesn't end with the gavel. Before Tyler left, and this was captured, everything in my courtroom is on record. He stopped. He turned around. His mother was in the gallery. I hadn't addressed her because she wasn't a party to the case, but I'd noticed her. I notice everyone. She was sitting very straight, hands in her lap, and she had not smiled once since she walked in. Tyler walked back to the plaintiff's table. Ms. Voss looked up at him. He said, "I'm sorry." 2 words. Quiet. No camera mugging, no performance, just 2 words with his eyes on hers. Ms. Voss said, "Thank you, Tyler," and she meant it. You can tell when people mean things. I said nothing, but I noted it. Inside, where no one could see it, I noted it. Because that moment right there was worth more than the $225. That was the actual lesson. The money was the consequence. The apology was the education. If you believe that moment matters, that accountability and a genuine apology are not signs of weakness but of character, subscribe to this channel. Because this is the kind of justice I built my career on, not drama for its own sake. Real accountability with real human stakes. About 6 weeks after this episode aired, I received a letter. We get letters. My production team filters them and passes along the meaningful ones. This one was from Ms. Voss. She wrote that Tyler had come back to her house, on his own, with a lawnmower. He'd mowed her lawn twice more before the summer ended, for free. He didn't ask her to drop the judgment. He didn't ask for anything. She said she made him lemonade, that they talked for a while, that he'd told her he was saving money for community college. She said he seemed different. I believed her. Not because I'm sentimental. I am not sentimental. But because I've watched enough human beings to know that occasionally consequences work. Occasionally, a moment of genuine truth in front of other people cracks something open in a person that no amount of private lecturing ever could. That is why public accountability exists, not to humiliate, to illuminate. I kept his mother's face in my mind too, because in 30 years in family court and then in this televised setting, I have watched parents carry their children's consequences in their faces. She knew. She'd known before she walked through those doors, and her son's apology, his genuine, unrehearsed two-word apology, was also for her, even if he didn't know it. People say to me sometimes, "Don't you get tired? Doesn't it wear on you, hearing problems all day, deciding things, carrying that weight?" And my answer is always the same. No, because the alternative is that nobody decides, and that helps no one. Justice delayed isn't just slow, it's demoralizing. When people who do things right see people who do things wrong walk away untouched, they stop trusting, they stop trying, they stop signing agreements and hiring teenagers and giving second chances. And then we all lose something. That is what I protect, not just the $225. The idea that doing things right is worth it, that keeping a calendar and holding onto a signed agreement and showing up to a small claims courtroom over a summer lawn service actually means something. It means something in my courtroom, every single time. Tell me in the comments what you would have done in my position. Would you have ruled differently? Would you have said something to Tyler that I didn't? I read these. I want to know. And if this case resonated with you, if you know someone who skips the work and then argues about the payment, share this video right now. Let them see it. Sometimes people need to watch someone else's moment of truth to find their own. Let me leave you with this, because I think about it more than anything else from that day. Tyler walked into my courtroom laughing at a woman who had done nothing wrong, and by the time he walked out, he was apologizing to her face. Something shifted in that room. Not because I yelled, not because I humiliated him, because I held the line, showed him the evidence, and refused to pretend the facts were anything other than what they were. That is the job. Hold the line, show the evidence, refuse to pretend. If more people did that in courtrooms, in families, in friendships, in businesses, we'd have fewer cases like this one. We'd also, if I'm honest, have fewer case files on my desk. But until that day comes, I'll be here, early, ready, skeptical of smirks and deeply respectful of calendars. Subscribe if you're ready for more, because nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what walked through my courtroom doors next week. And trust me, you won't see it coming either.